Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Now I am going to discuss on the topic called Light Penetrates Everything. Well, let us see in detail. First prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Avighram Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. The Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of light in all luminous objects. How? Like the sun, the moon, and the stars. In the Vedic literature, we find that in the spiritual kingdom, there is no need of the sun or moon because the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is there. These sun, moon, stars are not greater than the Supreme God. In the material world, that Brahma Jyoti means the Lord's spiritual effulgence is covered by the Mahat Tattva, means the material elements. Therefore, in this material world, we require the assistance of the sun, moon, electricity, etc. for light. But in the spiritual world, there is no need such things. It is clearly stated in the Vedic literature that because of his luminous effulgence, everything is illuminated. It is clear, therefore, that his situation is not in the material world. He is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky. That is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parasthat. He is just like the sun, eternally luminous, but he is far, far beyond the darkness of this material world. His knowledge is transcendental. The Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. That means supreme knowledge. To one who is anxious to be transferred to that spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. One Vedic mantra says, Tam ha devam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshur vai sharanamaham prapadye. That means one must surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he at all wants liberation, means salvation, moksha. As far as the goal of ultimate knowledge is concerned, it is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Tvameva viditvatim mrutyum eti. Only by knowing him can one surpass, mean overcome the boundary of the cycle called birth and death. God is situated in everyone's heart as the supreme controller. Kruddeshe Arjuna Tishtati, Bhagavad Gita quotes. The Supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere, and this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, that there are two knowers of the field of activity, the individual soul and the super soul, must be admitted. One's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. Is it? Brahma kadigina padamu. This is confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Sarvasya prabhum ishanam sarvasya sharanam brihat. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Super Soul, is the Prabhu or Master of all living entities. Therefore, He is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. Meaning, He is only Sharana. There is no other alternation. So, there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Super Soul and the individual soul are always different. That means there is difference between Atma and Paramatma. This alone is the light which illuminates things like the sun or lamp, a gem, etc. It is knowledge alone in the form of the effulgence of the self which illuminates a lamp, the sun, etc. But a lamp, etc., dispels the darkness that intervenes between the sense of sight and its subject. Their illuminating power is limited to this extent. This is said to be beyond tamas. The term tamas denotes prakriti in its subtle state. The meaning is that the self transcends prakriti. Therefore, it is to be comprehended as knowledge, to be understood as of the form of knowledge. It is attainable by means of knowledge, such as modesty, etc., already described. It is present in the heart of all. It is specially settled or present in the heart of all beings like men, etc. On Rudra Sampradaya, how it denotes, let us see it. The Supreme Lord Krishna, known as Parabrahma, the source of the Brahman or spiritual substratum pervading all existence, is the light of all its lights, the illuminator of even the sun and the stars. He is shining resplendently effulgent, all things shine from him. By his light, all creation is full of light. Therefore, Parabrahma is untouched by darkness and beyond all nescience untouched by ignorance, mean ajnana. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad beginning, Vedahametam Purusham Mahandam, meaning the Supreme Lord shines more brilliantly than the sun, and by realizing him only one attains moksha or liberation. There is no other way to accomplish this. It is this knowledge that is to be manifested in the functions of the intellect regarding the 20 superlative virtues given in it. It is also knowable in the form of sound by Om, the primordial sound frequency of Supreme Lord. It is also accessible, mean easily approachable. How? Through spiritual practices and easily attainable by bhakti or exclusive loving devotion to the Supreme Lord. The discovery of the Atma or immortal soul within the etheric heart is being emphasized by acquiring knowledge and performing appropriately for self realization. Now, Sri Madhvacharya of Brahma Sampradaya. Let us see his connotation. Since the Supreme Lord Krishna is achieved by experiencing spiritual knowledge, he is understood to be the goal of all knowledge. Know the Atma or immortal soul by experiencing the Atma. All the Supreme Lord is knowable by other means. Then the words he spoke earlier in verse 13, Jneyam yat tatra, meaning all that which is worth knowing, would make this verse repetitive. Now he affirms here the means to achieve what he revealed as a goal in verse 13, negating any contradiction. The Supreme Lord knows himself by his self alone. His knowing is not dependent on any external source outside of himself. In special cases of himself, he is able to be known by others as it is possible to know him by his desire and also by realization of the Atma. But only by his grace can this manifest, and without his grace, knowledge of him can never manifest. The Supreme Lord is self illuminated. He is self contented and he is equal towards all. Therefore, he is the foremost of all. He is the object of attainment for all, and all jivas or embodied beings should seek his grace, for only by his grace can he be known. Now, see Kumara Sampradaya. The Supreme Lord Krishna, known as Paramatma or Parabrahma, is the source of Brahman or spiritual substratum pervading all existence. It is solely his effulgence that illuminates all luminaries such as the sun, the stars, lightning, jewels, etc. with light. These luminaries only dispel the darkness, hindering the vision between the eyes and their objects, whereas the knowledge of the mere spark of the Supreme Lord, being the Atma or immortal soul, illuminates all physical lights, and without the Atma, knowledge of illumination is not possible. That's why the Atma is said to be totally beyond the darkness of Maya, which is deluding, external, illusionary potency of the Supreme Lord. The illusory nature of Maya is ever changing by nature, whereas the Atma is eternal and unchanging. The Atma is itself knowledge as well as the goal of all knowledge and is most worthy of attaining by the acquisition of knowledge. The qualifications to obtain this knowledge is found in the 20 excellent virtues expounded earlier in verse 8 to 12, beginning with reverence, humility, etc., which are in the hearts of all human beings, albeit dormant or active. The words Hridi Sarvasya Adhishtitam emphasize that the Supreme Lord Krishna is specially situated in the etheric heart of all living entities. Now, Adi Shankaracharya's Advaita Sampradaya, what he denotes, Tat, that knowable, In the Jyoti, light, api, even Jyotisham of the lights of the sun, etc. For the lights like the sun, etc., shine. Why? Because they are enkindled by the light of consciousness of the self, as is known from Upanishadic texts like illumined by whose light the sun shines. By its light, all this shines variously, and from the Smriti also, as here itself. That light in the sun, etc. It is spoken of as param, beyond, untouched by tamasaha, darkness, ignorance. For cheering up anyone who may become disheartened by thinking that knowledge, etc., is difficult to attain, the Lord says, it is jnanam, means knowledge, humility, etc. Jneyam, the knowable, which has been spoken of in. I shall speak of that which is to be known and jnanagamyam, the known. The knowable itself is referred to as jnanagamyam when after being known it becomes the result of knowledge. But when it is an object to be known, it is called jneyam. All these three which are called such as vishitam, specially exist hridi, in the heart, in the intellects, sarvasya, of all or of all creatures. For these three are indeed perceived there. Now let us come to Abhinava Gupta's Kaula Tantra Sampradaya. Beginningless is a Supreme Brahman. By means of the attributes like these, Bhagavatam describes the Brahman as being not separate from the Supreme Consciousness, expressed in every utterance, and thus gracing the seeker to infer his own nature. These attributes, however, have already been explained. As long as darkness exists in our hearts and minds, death exists in our being and slowly devours us. Only the sun can keep the darkness of death forever out of our existence. The moon also does it, but only partially. It cannot completely drive away the darkness of night as the sun does. However, the moon is still important. He can shine light upon earth and provide a temporary and partial relief from darkness. He can help people find their way in darkness from one place to another or safeguard themselves from hidden dangers. It is not a complete solution to the problems of darkness and suffering, death, and aging. However, it is much better than being in total darkness or in the sunless hills where no light can penetrate. The Bhagavad Gita specifies two conditions for yogis. For what? To reach the immortal world of Brahman. Number one, they must die at the right time and in right conditions. Number two, they must be knowers of Brahman. The right conditions are fire. When the sacrificial fires are burning in the home, or who the body is cremated daytime, the waxing period of the moon are the bright fortnight, and the 6 months in a year when the sun is traveling in the northern hemisphere. They are auspicious signs. Those who die in such circumstances are most likely to travel to the immortal world, never to return again. There is no punarjanma, rebirth. The dark path which leads to transmigration is also described. It refers to the fate of those who have not yet attained perfection or resolved their karma and who are still caught in the cycle of births and deaths, in samsara. The conditions which led or lead to rebirth are said to be smoke, mist, and fog, night, the waning period of the moon, or the dark fortnight, and the 6 months when the sun is traveling in the southern hemisphere. In contrast, those who have not yet attained complete purity or resolved their karma are very much like the moon. They are partially pure and cannot shine much light upon the world or upon their own suffering, since they have not yet fully resolved the darkness which exists in them and which arises from their impurities and past actions. They may discern some truths about themselves, but not clearly or completely. Their spiritual purity, knowledge, and wisdom very much reflect the mixture nature of smoke, night, the waning period of the moon, and the period when the sun is less intense, as during the winter or when it is in the southern hemisphere. You might have heard people talk about Einstein's speed of light, and that it's always the same. The part that most people leave out is that this is only true in vacuum. When there is no pesky molecules of air or water to slow it down. But when light moves through a more familiar medium like air, it moves slowly due to the interactions of individuals, photons, with the molecules in the material. In general, the more optically dense the medium, the slower the light will move. Light changes speed. How? Imagine that you and your friends are at the beach. You all decide to swim together. So you link arms and approach the water as a straight line. As you start walking into the water, you all slow down because it's harder to walk through water than through air. So imagine that you approach the water at an angle relative to the shoreline. The person on the end will meet the water and slow down first, then the next person in line, then the next, until everyone is walking through the water. Because one end of the line slowed down before the other end, the line of people becomes crooked, with the people who are still on the beach at a different angle relative to the water's edge than the people who have already entered the ocean. You can say that the water bends the path of each individual toward a normal line drawn perpendicularly to the shoreline, since the people still on the shore are bent further away from the shoreline than those in the water. The same thing happens to a light ray when it moves from air to water or from any fast medium. It bends towards the normal. Another least line principle. Another way to think of this is to imagine you and your friends are racing out to a raft in the middle of a lake. You have to travel across a beach and then through the water. Your friend decides to make a beeline for the raft and runs down the beach. You know that you can run faster than you can swim. So you head toward the water at an angle so that you run for longer than you will swim. Sure enough, your strategy pays off. Enough. And you get to the raft first. Your friend took the shortest path in terms of distance, but you took into account of the difference in speed in each medium and took the shortest path in terms of time. That means you took the path of least time. Light does exactly that when moving between mediums. It takes a path that will take the shortest amount of time. When you account for the difference in speed between the mediums. For example, imagine you are looking out the window. You have air, glass, and then air again. Glass is denser than air, so the light will take the path from the outside, passes from a fast medium through a slow medium and into a fast medium again. The light will take the path from outside to your eye that spends the least time. You can also see that the rule from the earlier still applies. When the light enters the glass, the ray is bent towards the normal. When it leaves the glass, it is bent away from the normal and regains the same angle as before it entered the glass. Let us see the scientific view. The act of seeing an object is the result of light from any luminous source. For example, the sun, a glowing candle, or a torchlight radiating outwardly from the source until it strikes the object and is reflected to travel to the observer's eyes, where if it retains sufficient intensity, it will form an image on the retina at the back of the eye to be interpreted by the brain. Now, finally, having critical teaching ideas. Luminous objects emit light. Non-luminous objects reflect and absorb light. Number 2. Light from each point on a luminous object travels outward in all directions in straight lines. 3. Light travels at very high speeds but is not instantaneously everywhere. Next, fourth one. Light from luminous objects travels indefinitely until it collides with matter in its path to be partially absorbed and reflected. Last one. Fifth. Objects are seen when light enters the eye from luminous objects or enters the eye after reflection from non-luminous objects to the eye. Challenge students' existing ideas. arranged to take the students into a photographic dark room to investigate if their eyes can adjust to seeing in complete darkness. It takes around 5 to 7 minutes for a person's eyes to become adapted to low light conditions. So it is best to gradually reduce the light levels over time to a very dim source before providing students with the experience of complete darkness. If the students experience complete darkness too rapidly, they may believe that their inability to see is caused by insufficient time for their eyes to adapt to the dark. श्रीकांताय कल्याणनिधे निधेद्रां श्रीवेङ्कटनिवासाय श्रीनिवासाय मङ्गलं मङ्गलाशासनपरैर्मदाचार्यपुरोगमैः सर्वैश्च पूर्वैराचार्यैः सत्कृतायास्तु मङ्गलम्.